questions. I like questions.
What other differences are there with nationals? I knew that's all sales call.
Right. They have to make a sales call, and team presentation, and a test. I believe that's it. The team presentation is a lot more extensive because they've got a whole bunch of, I think there's a lot more time too, but I have to do it. I'm still going on the rules for that. But I know they all have to do a sale. And they have to incorporate all that prospecting stuff.
I don't have a question. I was just going to say, when I was getting my team ready, I looked for a lot of sites, and one that I stumbled across was Walla Walla, Washington. And they have a 130-page booklet online that goes through each of the areas, and there are about 7 scenarios for each of the different parts. And that helped me a lot just with practice scenarios. And I pulled those into mine. So if you can find the Walla Walla, Washington site, if not, I'm Darcy Nicole, and feel free to email me at Oakwood, and I'd be more than happy to send that on to you.
Yeah, I should have.
W-A-L-L-A.
I should have mentioned that I use the internet a lot for stuff. I'll give you some more. I think it's the Iowa FFA website. It has some great test questions. And I think it's also the Indiana State website. But if you Google what salespeople do, it talks about direct and indirect selling right on the first page, and there's a lot of test questions on that stuff.
What was that one? I'm sorry?
If you Google what salespeople do, you probably find this. What salespeople do. It talks about direct and indirect selling and the different types of sales. And I printed off a 4-page document. And I give that to every student too. But you can Google sales and get all kinds of stuff. And I didn't want to go into printing all that stuff out for you.
Having sold also, the hardest thing is closing the sale.
Mm-hmm.
So when you teach that, you know, there's different parts of closing the sale. You know, either obviously the optimum is getting the sale, but if I repeatedly say, hey, I'm not interested, what do you tell your students? How do they leave the situation then? How do you teach
I
that?
should ask you how you do it if you're in sales.
Well, I know how I did it. I at least would say, at least make an appointment, or say, can I call you in 2 or 3 days to see if you've changed your mind? I always would try to leave it so that to keep the door of communication open. Is that
I do the same thing, but I don't. It's not, can I call you in a few days, because that's yes or no.
Right.
It's when can I call you?
Okay.
Or when can I stop by next, or could I stop by next Tuesday? That's a yes or no, but that's right on.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. And that's what it'll say in any instruction, that if they don't buy the product, set up another appointment.
Right. And that's what
Yeah. And has that happened at a contest? Yeah. I've had kids that didn't make the sale, and they could set up an appointment.
But if they've set up an appointment, they've still
kind of closed the sale.
Right.
But they didn't sell anything, they just closed. Right. Great info.
What's the difference, I mean, between, you've got ag issues contests, we've got ag sales contests, you've got ag communications, you've got all these contests for teams. Isn't there, I mean, you know, I hosted ag issues last year, you came to it, I sat and listened to it. Isn't there a whole tremendous amount of overlap on these contests?
We did well.
When they're talking about, you know, it's just like when you sat down there today and they were talking about putting CDEs together and trying to have a whole bunch of them in one day. I could see where it's, you know, the same identical people are going to do this the same thing. Aren't they the same ones? I mean,
well, we competed in all 3 of those,
right?
and I only had 3 overlapping students. So I'd rather do an in-service on ag issues, to tell you the truth. But we practice ag issues for 1.5 years. Because you've got to write your portfolio, it's kind of the same concept, you're right. It's all team communication stuff. Right?
Communications, because
The kids gotta do
they
their
all gotta be
part.
involved.
Yeah.
You gotta be
So what was your question, I guess?
Well, I'm trying to figure out why, you know, such similarity, to me, they're the same thing. I mean, so similar to being the same thing.
They are similar.
And they really, you know,
They have their
what's
differences.
different?
In ag issues, a lot of your score in ag issues is your community forums that you've done 2 or 3 lessons before.
Yeah, previous to coming.
You could train an ag sales team in less than a month, a good one. It takes you at least 6 months to train a good ag issues team. That's my opinion. Don could probably do it in a week. Any other, you guys share anything that you do? Because I'd be interested too.
Well, I was in sales too, and a few years ago, I judged this contest, because when I got back to teaching, was teaching. And I hate the term order taking,
Okay?
because, you know, in sales, it's, am I gonna sell it to you, am I just gonna sit here and say, hey, do you wanna buy something? Sure, I'll buy it, no. Okay, buy, you know, that's, and the one I got into was the phone thing. When I would call some kid, say, okay, I got a problem, my seed didn't come up, I need some seed. And every single one of them said, well, can I make an appointment for next week? And I sit there and say, I'm gonna replant today. Well, can I come out and look at it next week? Oh, that's fine, you come out next week, but I'm planting it today. Okay, can I come out next Wednesday? Fine, I'm going to Pioneer and get my seed over there. And, you know, the kids don't catch on. I mean, when I was in it, when I got a phone call, I was fine. It wasn't, I'll see you next week. The worst I ever had was, I'll see you first thing in the morning. But I had to be there. That's what they expected. And these kids gotta know there's a matter of urgency in a lot of this stuff when you get in season. I mean, I had a guy call me one night and said, I need 50 bags of seed first thing in the morning. And I said, no problem, what variety do you want? He says, well, now you can't have it here first thing in the morning. And I said, it will be there first thing, what variety do you want? And he told me, he says, well, I said, what time do you need it by? He said, I need it sitting here at 6:30. I said, no problem, I'll be there at 6:30. So now you can't have it here. And that's what it was all about, it's about urgency. And these kids need to know this in this contest, it's not a convenience thing. You know, maybe with the TV, well, we can come think about a new one next week. Or we'll order you one to replace the one you have. In farming, it's urgent. And that's gotta be put across to them.
I start out this unit and ask the students if the customer is always right. Are they? No. You treat them like they are? Yes. Because being on both sides of the sale, I know they're not always right. And you do too, if you've been in sales, right? The customer's not always right. But you can't treat them that way. So that's kind of what I start off with.
Well, the other thing, I worked in sales too for 25 years in John Deere. And one of the things is, too many times as the salesperson or the person that's, in this case I'm thinking of service managers, they know the answers before the questions are asked. But if they don't let the customer have his say or her say, then all of a sudden, you know, they've got bigger issues. Because sometimes they think they've already solved the problem, and the customers, even though it's 100% fixed, the customer's still mad because they haven't listened. You know, it's just like what he said, did you hear me? Did you hear me? You know?
Talking about that stuff in class with the kids gets them going on that, what they would do.
Exactly.
And I think it helps them on the test and on their practical. Because they gotta know how to relate to the customer.
When you have an unhappy customer, the first thing, you want to obviously retain that person as a customer. So the first thing I was taught, you know, as a salesman, what do I need to do to retain your business? And what you've done there is you just told that customer you care about him or her. The second thing is, usually, if you kind of throw that ball in their court, they're gonna be reasonable. And then it's their idea. You know, and that gives you a good starting point. You know, what do I have to do to make this right?
Which reminds me again, here's another, if you're doing, how many of you teach sales in class? Okay. Bring in some guest speakers, some salesmen. I forgot to mention that. We might have done sales, we might do sales, but if somebody's out there right now doing sales, it's fresh, and they can help the kids out a lot.